Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The purpose of our existence in this state of being is to come to know Allah. And the methodology for coming to know Allah has to do with consciousness. And consciousness is a sliding scale. We go from lower levels of consciousness to higher levels of consciousness, and vice versa. We can slide up the scale, but we can also slide down the scale. And a question that often arises is, when you slide down the scale, how do you get back up the scale? What is it that gets you to slide down? And what is it that gets you to rise again in your consciousness? And how do you go about doing it? Well, let's talk about consciousness a little bit first. And consciousness is described in many ways. There is the animal consciousness, which is the consciousness that's available to animals, but is also very common in man, and are the first three stages of consciousness in man. And it's only when man begins to discern his first three levels of consciousness and understands his limitations that he begins to move forward into the higher levels of consciousness. And this understanding level is the fourth level of consciousness, and that's the level called judgment or discernment. And in that level, man begins to say things like, is that all there is? Is this constant running in a circle, repeating the same things we've done our entire life, all there is? And within these lower levels of consciousness are egocentric ideas and egocentric thoughts and an egocentric attitude. In other words, we're very connected to our body, and we're very connected to our body is us, and our interaction with the entire world is our body interacting with the world. And we are constantly in the position where we think that things are being done to us, and we are reacting to the things that are being done to us. So we get involved in things like pride. We get involved in things like shame. We get involved in things like anger and guilt. We get involved in personal animosities. We get involved in personal things. Everything is personal. So at these lower levels of consciousness, everything is personal. It's all about you. It's all about things are being done to you. We need to move through that phase. Now, for the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about courage. And I've indicated that in times of difficulty, we have to have courage to face the things that are difficult for us. Well, it's very difficult when you're being blamed for stuff to have the courage to ignore it. It's very difficult when you're angry to let go of the anger and to move forward into higher levels of consciousness. And what are higher levels of consciousness? It's a different kind of understanding of things than you have in the lower levels. It's a different attitude towards humanity than you have in the lower levels. In the lower levels, everything is about me and my interaction with things. Everything's being done to me. Everything is being done because of me. When we begin to understand more, we begin to understand that we're not really in control. And again, it takes great courage to let go of being in control. The whole world talks about control freaks. Most people think they control their lives. So they are constantly looking for solutions and answers and trying to implement them in their lives because they think they are the doer. When we leave that thought pattern and can go into the thought pattern that Allah is the doer, and we surrender to Him and His doing, we shift who we are, and we shift our consciousness. Our consciousness no longer becomes egocentric. Our consciousness now becomes more universal. And as our consciousness becomes more universal, our attitude towards others and our attitude towards humanity shifts. We become more in tune with the people that we are around. We become more empathetic to the people that we are around. Empathy in the lower levels of consciousness is lacking because we are only concerned with ourselves. It's when we can become concerned with others that our consciousness shifts. We had the grace in our lives to be in the presence of a person of higher consciousness, to be in the presence of an insan kamil, a true man, something we strive to become. And what we noticed, and what everyone noticed who came into his presence, was that his existence was not about himself. His existence was on behalf of all those who came into contact with him. He was constantly giving to others. He did not need anything for himself. This is a shift in consciousness. This is a universal shift in who we are. Allah is the sustainer, the nourisher, the giver, the merciful, the compassionate. Allah's qualities represent the higher levels of consciousness. We need to change from concentrating on ourself entirely to concentrating on humanity and concentrating on God. Now, in order for us to be able to become true to ourselves and true to others, we have to be able to spend time with ourselves and clear ourselves of all of our aberrations. We have to clear ourselves of being in control. We have to clear ourselves of anger. We have to clear ourselves of animosities. We have to clear ourselves of difficulties. Now, for some people, the response is, but my situation is overwhelming. I'm in the midst of so many problems, and every morning when I wake up, I'm overwhelmed by these problems, and it's difficult for me to get back to a higher state. Well, again, unless we understand that consciousness slides, we're never going to be able to understand what we have to do. And what we have to do is every day there has to be effort put into our state of being. So every day we have to reinvigorate the love within us. Every day we have to invigorate the compassion within us. Every day we have to make strong the mercy within us again. We can't expect that if we had a good day yesterday, we're going to have a day that doesn't require effort tomorrow. Every day requires effort. There is a saying in Islam that Allah loves effort. And the point is that if we're going to love Allah, we have to put forth effort. And it's a never ending struggle. Effort never stops. When we were with Bawa, during the last years of his life, it was really the most noticeable. He had difficulty breathing, he had difficulty speaking, and he was quite ill. Yet, he put forth the effort every day to speak to us, to encourage us, to talk to us about what needs to be done in order to become Insan Kamil. He never stopped putting forth effort. He never said, I'm too ill, I'm not going to talk anymore. He never said, I'm overwhelmed by my circumstances. Now, he had a very elevated level of consciousness, which means his physical characteristics, his physical difficulties did not impugn, did not make less his consciousness. He didn't fall victim to them. Now, we constantly have a choice. Are we going to fall victim to our circumstances, or can we rise above our circumstances? And this is a critical question, because it's very easy to become a victim. It's very easy to begin to feel sorry for yourself. It's very easy to stay in a state of grief or in a state of being desolate, being without hope. But it takes effort and courage to pull yourself out of that state. Now, there's two different situations here. There's the situation with you, with yourself, and you with others. With yourself, you have to constantly push yourself to become higher in consciousness. You can't feel sorry for yourself. It doesn't get you anywhere. But you should have compassion for the work that you have to do, and you should work very hard, put forth a lot of effort to raise yourself to a state of love. Now, with others who you find in difficulty, you can aid them and explain to them what they need to do to help themselves. But a lot of them can't help themselves yet. Bawa said to us that when he first met many of us, we were in such states that all he could do was hold us to his breast and shake us like a baby until we could come into our own. We were so overwhelmed by our own circumstances. So when we meet people who are overwhelmed by their circumstances, it doesn't work necessarily to say, get over it or stop it. That's not going to bring about a solution. With those people, you have to be kind, you have to be considerate, you have to go slowly, and you have to be compassionate and merciful, just like we ask Allah to be compassionate and merciful towards us. Whatever state that we're in, we still have many states to move forward into. And Allah knows the state that we're in, and He knows how far we have to go. So we have to ask of Him to be merciful and compassionate to us. Now, for ourselves, we have to put forth effort to bring ourselves into higher consciousness. And what is higher consciousness? And how can you tell you're in higher consciousness? When you're in lower consciousness, you resent your state. You resent what you've been given. You become angry at the situation that you're in. When as you move higher into consciousness, you accept your state, and it doesn't become the beginning and end of who you are. You understand that no matter what your circumstances are, joy and love are still possible. And you are able to bring joy and love into your situation. This is why it's called transcendence. Transcendence means to transcend above your circumstances into the levels of consciousness that are godly. So everyone has circumstances. Everyone has difficulties. Everyone has situations that are difficult to come over. Right now, the entire world is in a situation that is difficult to overcome. But look what we're doing here. We're still having meetings. We're still talking to each other. We're still looking at each other, and we're doing it from around the world. It's really quite incredible. But this took effort. It took somebody to set all this up. It took each of you to be here at a certain time and to tune in. Why? For the ability to get together and to lift ourselves up higher, to make ourselves more, to be able to take our circumstances and not let them overwhelm us, but to transcend them. So the word transcend is an important word. It comes with enlightenment. You keep transcending until you become enlightened. So wherever we are, whatever state we're in, we need to transcend. We need to get higher. And we need to know where we need to go to be higher. First, we have to find peace in ourselves. Peace is salam. Salam is the name of Allah. If you can find peace, that means you have incorporated Allah's qualities within you. As you incorporate Allah's qualities within you, you rise on the levels of consciousness. As compassion comes into you, you rise in the levels of consciousness. As mercy comes into you, you rise in the levels of consciousness. As you are able to give to others, you rise in the levels of consciousness. And as you rise in the levels of consciousness, you are allowed to experience what goes on at those higher levels of consciousness. And what goes on at those higher levels of consciousness is love. The love for others and the love for yourself and Allah's love. You're able to feel Allah's love, and you're able to transmit Allah's love. You're able to smile. You're able to take what's been given to you and accept it. And this acceptance takes courage. Most people try to fight their circumstances and push them aside. I have found in my experience that circumstances change. And they don't necessarily change because of your effort. They change because of the nature of circumstances. This world is with and without pandemics. We had nothing to do with it, but it happened to us, and we're living with it, and we're in the middle of it. I didn't make the pandemic. I'm not going to stop the pandemic. Either are any of us. But we can ask Allah to change the circumstances. We can ask Allah to bring about a new set of circumstances. And not that we are complaining about these present circumstances, because we're accepting where we are, but we know there is a better place. And we have to pray for this better place, not just for ourselves, but for all of humanity. As we transcend, as our consciousness becomes higher, we become more in tune with everybody else we know. We become more in tune with all of humanity. We lose our animosities towards other religions. We lose our sense of differences from other people. We don't see color in faces anymore. We don't see differences in languages. We don't see differences in nationalities. We see the sameness. Now, I have been fortunate enough to travel around the world quite a bit, and I've gone through a lot of different cultures and a lot of different countries, a lot of different languages, a lot of different religions. And what I've seen is everybody is the same in all of them. They all want the same kinds of things. They all pray in the same kind of way. They are all looking to be saved. They are all looking for their own salvation and the salvation of their families and friends. We need to look beyond just ourselves and our families and friends and look for the salvation of the entire world. We have to pray for the salvation of the entire world. We have to ask for the salvation of the entire world. We have to be able to be open to everybody by becoming open to Allah. So if we can learn how every day to set a center within ourselves where we accept our circumstances, have the courage to go away from grief and anger and animosity and praise and blame, leave those things and move into the higher levels of acceptance and love and kindness and mercy and joy, we will become different people. And I've told this story so many times, but it's worth repeating. The two princesses, one who was always joyous and beautiful, and the other one who was constantly angry, and people were afraid of her. And she went into a town, the two of them went into a town and said, "You have to tell us which of us is the most beautiful." And the town was very afraid. So they went to the head man in the town, the Hoja, the oldest man, and he said to them, to the two princesses, the one who was evil and the one who was merciful, he said, "Walk away from me." And then he said, "Walk towards me." "Walk away from me," and then walk towards me. And then he said, "You're equally beautiful. One is beautiful when you walk away from me, and one is beautiful when you come towards me." Well, we always, every day, we have to ask the same question. When are we the most beautiful? When we leave a room or when we come into the room? Because all of these stories are about you and me. They're not about anybody else. They're about us. We have to have that status that when we walk into a room, people go, "Well, thank God you're here," as opposed to when you walk into a room and you leave and they say, "Thank God you're gone." There's the story of, I think his name was Torquemada, who conquered much of Turkey. And he heard that people had the names of God in their names. And he asked that he be given a name of God. And he was killing people left and right, and he wasn't very well liked, obviously. So they brought a Hoja to him to give him a name of God. And the Hoja said, "Well, I will give you a name of God, but I'm going to seal it, and you can't open up the envelope for 3 days after I give it to you." So he gave him the envelope, and then the Hoja took off. 3 days later, Torquemada opened up the envelope, and it said, "God forbid." This is the reality of existence. The reality is that we need to find our true place in existence. And our true place is with Allah and with the qualities of Allah. And if we can't incorporate the qualities of Allah into our lives, we're going to incorporate illusion into our lives. And what happens when we incorporate illusion into our lives is we become susceptible to all of the magnetisms and the hypnotisms that illusion brings with it. And illusion brings the ups and downs. Illusion brings praise and blame. Illusion brings anger. Illusion brings animosity. Illusion brings differences. Truth brings a reality that shows that there are no differences. Haq, reality, shows us that the only reality are God's qualities. And we have to be conscious of the fact that God's qualities can't be seen. They can't be touched. They can't be lifted. They can't be measured. And the scientists have no way of explaining them. Yet we all know that when we are in a state of love, we are different than when we are not in a state of love. When we are being compassionate, we are different than when we are being angry. When we are being merciful, we're different than when we are being hateful or hasty. So we have to go through a constant examination of who we are every day. And we have to use effort to change our vibratory nature. Our vibratory nature can be a very low nature, where we are in the midst of grief, in the midst of anger, in the midst of resentment, or we can lift that vibratory nature into the higher levels of consciousness where we accept our situation and we love in spite of our situation because we have transcended our situation. We are all subject to the same things in life. We're all subject to illness. We're all subject to death. We're all subject to the same fears and the same problems that each of us has. No one is given any more or less. Jealousy, when you have jealousy, makes you think that Allah is treating you somehow different than he's treating everybody else, except the fact that Allah treats us all the same. And there is a justice in the way that he treats us. But when we lose sight of this, we lose sight of our situation in reality. And it throws off our balance. It throws off our ability to be kind. It throws off our ability to love. Victims are vicious people because they think they can do anything because they've been victimized. So since they've been victimized, they're going to make you a victim too. Don't become a victim. Transcend your difficulties. Take them and accept what's going on and love in spite of them. The nature of illusion is that everything dissipates and everything disappears. Now we know that. Going in, we know that. It's a given. That's the way it is. Accept the state of man and love in spite of what appears to be the difficulties of existence. Learn to love in spite of everything, accept in spite of everything. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can put forth the effort to love in the face of adversity, to love in the face of difficulty, to love in the face of animosity, the more that we become closer to Allah. And the reward of being close to Allah is just that, being close to Allah. Because when you are close to Allah, you get to share in his qualities. And there's no greater treasure in this world than to be able to share in Allah's qualities. Now, we should also pray, and we should incorporate, in addition to our ritual prayers, we should incorporate heartfelt prayers directly to God. We should communicate to Allah how we are, how we're feeling, and what we need in this world right now. And we have to set forth the parameters of prayer. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, O merciful, compassionate one, O one who is alone, O one who is unique, O one who guides us and who nurtures us and who protects us and who gives us all that we need. We ask of you, Allah, to protect all of humanity. O Allah, we are your creation. We are the servant. We understand that the Rasul was Abd before he was Rasul, which means he was a slave of God before he became his messenger. If we are to become close to you, we have to become your slaves. But for us to become your slaves, we need your help. We need you to take away from us all of the things that are attached to this world. We need you to relieve us of our need for all of the things of this world. We need you to relieve us of the idea that somehow we are nurtured by the things that are in this world. We need to understand how none of that is real, and the only thing that is real is you. And we need to be able to transcend all of the illusory things in this world so that we can connect with you. But we need your help to do this. We need your involvement in our lives. And the way we set up involvement in our lives with you is to open ourselves up to you and to ask you to bring the light of your existence into our lives. We need to be able to see that which we cannot see with these eyes. We need to be able to hear the truth that we cannot hear with these ears. We need to hear from the inner ear and see with the inner eyes. We need to see Haq, reality, your reality. We need to become blind to illusion and open to reality. And Allah, this is only going to happen through your involvement in our lives, and we open ourselves up to you. We pray to you as your creation and ask for your help, because there is nowhere else for us to turn other than you in truth. We can believe that there are other solutions, but in truth, there is only one solution, and you are our solution. So come to us, help us, make us strong to go in your way, make us strong to follow your lead, make us strong to be among the ones who are counted as your friends, because we do your will and we have let go of our will. Allah, we ask this of you for each of us, for all of humanity. Open up the hearts of all of humanity. Humanity is now in a position where it understands how fragile all of us are, how fragile every man, woman, and child in this world is, how we are within the brink of death at any moment. We realize this now. You've made it clearly evident to each of us. Now bring us out of this situation and bring us into a situation where we can walk in the streets again, and we can see each other again, and we can be joyous with each other again, where we can uplift each other again, and we can help each other again. Break all the animosities in the world. Break all the differences in the world. Break all the things that separate us from each other and bring us together again, Allah. This is your work, and you're the only one who can do this work. And we submit to that. We submit to you doing that work. Allah, please bring this about. Please bring this about quickly. Do this in the name of the prophets and of the Ketubs and of all of the believers in this world. And Allah, there are many believers. People are praying all over the world right now, praying that you bring an end to this plague that is threatening the world, and that you bring about a solution to these problems. But even with the adversities that we face, we acknowledge it is our position to continue to love. We acknowledge that we must transcend these difficulties and continue to love. So Allah, in love, we ask for this. In love, we pray to you to make things easier for humanity. And we ask that you do this quickly, and that you put cures into the hands of your doctors and scientists so that the world can become peaceful again. And we ask, when this is over, and we know it will be over because we know you are merciful and compassionate, that the countries begin to get along, and people stop killing each other, and people realize how fragile this entire existence is, and that we enter into a state of peace and love in this world that will last for eternity until you come and take us. May it be so, our Lord. Ameen. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.